Greetings. Welcome to Enthusiastic Life. I am your host, Brendan Walsh. Thank you so much for joining us. We're so happy that you're here. This week's episode features Dr. John Cassleman. Sean has been a friend of mine for years. I'll let him share our intro and how we know each other, but he is a doctor of internal medicine here in the Detroit area and the founder of Mission Metabolic Health. This is a topic I could talk about all day long: preventative medicine, longevity, taking steps to live a longer, healthier life. And I just think what Sean is doing with his practice, I think he's onto something. And I hope you enjoyed this episode. I hope you learned something from it. And I want everyone to live a longer, healthier life. And I think this is what he's doing can help a lot of people go a long way towards that. So please enjoy our conversation with Dr. John Cassleman. John Cassleman, welcome to the Enthusiastic Life podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Do you mind starting off by introducing yourself to our audience?
Sure. My name's Dr. John Cassleman. I'm an internal medicine doctor practicing in St. Clair Shores, Michigan. I grew up in the area in the Grosse Pointe city. And actually, my parents lived on the street that you live on now. So pretty cool. Left the area for only a brief time in my life, in college and for a year to do some work out in Boston, but really came back. So, I feel a strong connection to the area and did my training here. And, I've had now 8 years of primary care under my belt on the east side of Detroit.
So. Nice. And I always like to start with our, if I have known the guest for a while, with our origin story. So Sean, how did we meet?
So I think it was probably a relationship that developed gradually, but we did some morning basketball together.
We did.
So this is kind of a grind league. This is guys getting together at 6 a.m. to, not with the highest skill level, but with a lot of determination. And we were charged with being the big guys. Right?
Yeah.
I don't have quite your height, but
we were always matched up against each other.
We were always matched up, and it was punishing, to be honest with you. I think like a couple of years into it, because it went on for a number of years.
It's still going on now.
I'm not as active in participation at this point, just like in self-preservation mode. But
same.
In those early, I think a couple of years in, we were like, hey, we should probably have a truce before these games, just so we walk out of here without a limp.
There were definitely some minor injuries. I remember a couple times where I think I got you and you got me back, and it wasn't. It was never intentional, right?
No.
It was but it's actually one of the reasons why I don't do that run anymore is because there were so many random little injuries. It's like, I've got other ways I can get an exercise.
Yes.
And it also corresponded with COVID. And I was like, when they came back to play, I was like, I'm not quite ready to be rubbing up against some sweaty guys at 6 o'clock in the morning playing basketball.
Yeah, I think, like I said, self-preservation starts to come into play as you get a little bit older, you get a little wiser, but it's great fun. And I mean, it's hard to beat a morning basketball exercise. Like it's the cardiovascular output is massive.
Yeah.
And, you're not going to let that ball roll away from you. You're going to get on the ground and get it.
Well, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I get the sense that you might have a similar gear to me where it's like when I'm playing, I can't slow down. Like my brain still says, just go, right? Like 100%.
Yes.
And I'm 46. I don't need to be doing that anymore, but it's still hard to turn that off.
It's really hard to turn off. And it's something that I still do the nighttime basketball league, and I've thought so hard about this because as you know, I don't have much of a jump shot. So a lot of it is hustle, defense, rebounding, right? And that takes its toll. So I try to be more selective about it, still enjoy it, but not expose myself to a massive amount of risk of playing 3 times a week or something.
Yeah. So speaking of athletics, I saw you went to John Carroll for football.
Yeah.
So did you play in high school in Grosse Pointe?
I went to U of D Jesuit.
Okay.
Played there, really, because of the Jesuit connection, looked at a lot of Jesuit schools, and John Carroll being in Cleveland, having a Division III football program. I was kind of drawn there to continue on, and I loved it. I had a wonderful time there. It was like kind of a magical 4 years, like most people describe with their college. And football was a big part of that, but I think it was kind of a neat place because, one, it was away from home, but not too far. And there was a great culture around football down there, but also a great academic culture. So.
And when did medicine come into your life? When did you know that was what you wanted to do?
So I came back actually for a year to teach at U of D High in this alumni volunteer corps, which is like a year of, it's volunteer, I taught a biology class. I knew all along I loved science, right? That was always something I was interested in. The classes I did best in, had the easiest time paying attention in. So I wanted to do something science related. And I really enjoyed the teaching component. I really enjoyed getting to know the kids and being with them for a semester at a time. So medicine was kind of on my radar, but I didn't make that decision until I moved out to Boston after that, worked in a microbiology lab, which is more like certainly the science component, but more like pipetting all day and, which is great. You get some deep thought in, deep work in, but I was missing that connection to people. And so putting those things together, the teaching, the science, kind of getting to know people and be around them over time, medicine started to make more and more sense to me.
Nice. So then you go get your medical degree.
Yeah, came back, went to Michigan State.
Okay.
Yep.
And then did your residency here, I saw, and then went into practice?
Yeah, so I did my residency at Detroit Medical Center, Sinai Grace in internal medicine, and that was very hospital-based, dealing with a lot of acute disease. People were very sick, so it was a great place to train, but I really enjoyed that longitudinal relationship, so I decided to sort of move into primary care with that internal medicine background. And then, took a job with Ascension, St. John, and I've been practicing in St. Clair Shores since that time in that primary care capacity. And it really has delivered on what I expected, right? It's so cool to get to know your patients and to be with them for years. And they walk in, about what's going on in their family and, what they're excited about, what travel they just did, all that cool stuff.
Nice.
So, yeah.
So tell me about Mission Metabolic Health. Where did that idea come from? How did this all come to be?
So I like to talk about it from a couple of perspectives. One is from kind of a primary care perspective, in that when you're practicing primary care, there's some limitations on you as far as how much time you can spend with the patient, and really how much kind of meaningful change you can deliver to them in that short time you spend.
And why is that?
What's that?
And why do you think that is?
Well, I think one is like, I come from that exercise background, right? I've always loved nutrition, and been interested in it and tried to practice it to the best of my abilities. It's hard to talk, take apart someone's diet and what they're doing right and what they're doing wrong, and then give them practical advice in that short period of time, especially when you're charged with, making sure their health maintenance up to date, making sure that you talked about their blood pressure, you have them on the right medicines. All those things in that small window of time become very challenging. And so I wanted to find a way to deliver that level of care to people. And the idea of Mission Metabolic Health kind of came that way. I thought about all the wonderful things all the great value I get going to the gym, right? How can I get that into my patient's life? And so the idea originally was to have a medical practice that had a gym in it. And that's what we've been able to do.
Nice.
So, yeah.
So when did it open and how's it going so far?
So we opened about 6 months ago, beginning of the year. And it's going well. We're trying to get the word out, right? That's the real challenge, is to tell people about what we're doing, why we're doing it, and how we're doing it. And it's not always easy to do that. We, of course, working with marketing and such, but even just grassroots, You know, I've done some talks locally, and that has been the way we've gotten the most traction, is really to get out in Grosse Pointe, St. Clair Shores, local Metro Detroit, and just get the word out about, you know, what we're doing. Because when you see like how much value the patients are getting out of it, you know, like once people find out about it, like they're going to love it.
So tell me a little, what inspired you to start Mission Metabolic?
So, you know, I told you a little bit about the vision, right, of combining primary care and the exercise space and nutrition. But I have to say, my wife was a huge part of this. And the reason was we had started a dental practice for her about 6 years ago.
Okay.
And she's like, she is so different from me. Like, I stress about the littlest things. If I see money going out the door, it's, you know, keeping me up at night. She is just goes for it. And that's what we did when we opened her practice. And she's had such good success that, really, I had the guts finally to, you know, make this move. And there's no way I would have done it without her. And, you know, over the course of the past few months, it's hard, right? Like there's plenty of worry that goes into this. And without her like support, there's like no way I would have been able to keep going. So I got to mention her on that front.
That's awesome. So, you know, 2 entrepreneurs in the family. That's great. I mean, to have that support, to have someone like that in your corner.
Yeah. And, you know, all the little bumps you hit along the way, she's dealt with a lot of it before. So, you know, she can talk me through it. Certainly helped me. Her experience at St. Clair Tooth Co. has been, you know, so valuable to me.
Yeah. Oh, no, that's really cool. I never would have thought of that, to have what the things that you've experienced, you have that shared experience where you can say, you know, this is going to be fine, right? Like,
yes, that's the exact sentence you need to hear a lot.
Yeah.
Like, it's going to be fine.
It's going to be okay.
Yeah.
As a business owner, I can appreciate that, because there are definitely times you're like, what am I doing right now?
Yes.
And why am I doing this?
Yes, absolutely.
So then I'm curious then. So tell me more about what you're doing, and why you're doing it, and how you're doing it, and how is it different than someone going to their doctor?
So we have formatted it in a couple ways, right? A lot of what we're doing is around kind of a weight loss format, and that doesn't mean that's our only goal, but those programs are kind of developed to work with patients over about 6-month period. And they're checking in with me on a frequent basis, depending on what intensity they want, really to take a deep dive on their chart, to look at their labs, come up with strategies about monitoring those labs and tying them to the progress they're making through all these foundational things we're doing: diet, exercise, sleep. Also, it's become a way to deliver care beyond the standard of care, right? It's important to check those boxes that you do at a primary care doctor. Make sure your colonoscopy is up to date. Make sure you're getting appropriate basic labs. But there's a lot of opportunity to move beyond that, right? To do deep dives from a cardiovascular perspective, from a cancer prevention perspective, preventing neurodegenerative disease. And really our main focus, which we think is tied to all 3 of those, and that's preventing metabolic disease. So the hypertension, the diabetes, the hyperlipidemia. How can we target those things, not just through medicines, although that's part of the picture, but really through those lifestyle changes?
So tell me more then about metabolic disease, right? If it's not something that's on people's radar, right, that it's something that they need to be looking out for, aware of. Tell me more about metabolic disease, its prevalence in society, and what people can be doing because I think, you know, a lot of people are looking, modern medicine, right, is how do we cure this? How do we solve this? How do we medicate it? How do you prevent it?
Yeah. I think, you know, it's interesting that you started with like, how do we cure this? How do we solve this? Versus like, and you mentioned last, how to prevent it. Because that really is sort of the Western model in many ways, is, you know, addressing disease when it happens and then trying to get on top of it right then and there. again, the prevention is so critical. And when we talk about metabolic disease, yes, it's manifesting in all those things we talked about before, diabetes, hypertension, hyperlipidemia. But there are more subtle signs that often present in the labs before you have one of those diagnoses. And even before the labs show it, it may be a change in body composition, right? From any particular challenge along the way in life. So we focus on muscle mass, body fat percentage. All those things are part of a complex system of markers that we can jump on early. And we want to start with those lifestyle things, right? Because those, no matter what medicine we need to throw at you for a genetic reason, for whatever reason, you still got to have those foundational things in place to really do well.
So tell me then more about, so you have your side on the medical side. Mm-hmm. Tell me about the gym.
Okay. So yeah, which I think
is really cool.
It's really exciting. It's so cool. Every time I walk into our office and I see it, like a smile comes to my face because it's something I've been dreaming about for a long time. We have trainer nutritionists, we call them coaches on staff, that after the patient meets with me, they'll meet up with the coach. We'll do a nutritional intake. We'll do an exercise intake through a strength and mobility assessment where they kind of go through some maneuvers with the patient, do some lifts with them to find out where their deficiencies are, where their strengths are. And then typically the coach and I will come together. We'll talk about putting a plan together that's comprehensive from both the medical and those other aspects. The patient comes back in about a week and they're doing in-house training with the trainers in almost every single one of our programs. They're doing nutritional counseling with the patients, and having that accountability is so critical. Changing course when something doesn't go right. Having a third party from all those perspectives just brings a lot of value to making effective change in people's lives.
And I think particularly cool in that you have someone that we both know from the DAC, who's part of that, Rosie Reeves.
Yeah, so
on your team.
Rosie's fantastic. We're so lucky to have her. She brings incredible energy, like every day. Yeah. It's amazing. She's always got a smile.
Unbelievable.
And I had gotten to know her a little bit, of course, through the DAC, her being the head trainer here for a while. She had left, really focusing on her family. And obviously she's still very focused on that, really dedicated. I admire her for that, to her family. But I was able to reach out to her, when I was thinking about opening this thing and reconnect with her. And honestly, she has such good insight on all those things, from the nutrition to the sleep, to the stress management, to, of course, the exercise, right? We all knew she had that component.
So you mentioned, a client will come, or a patient will come see you, and you say it's about a 6-month window of time.
In our initial programs, that's usually what they're.
And so what will that 6-month period typically look like for them?
So depending on the intensity that they choose, right, it could be a monthly meeting with me. It could be just a couple meetings with me over that 6 months. But in almost every one of our formats, they're meeting regularly with the coaches, and the coaches are communicating with me on how things are going. So we have, again, a couple formats for that, but at a minimum, every other week, they're checking in with the coaches to go over those nutritional things, find any roadblocks that are there, make modifications, and then they are also doing that in-house training. So we're developing some classes to supplement that. And we have some open gym times where patients can use our gym, but really our focus here was to make long-term change with patients, really, so they could execute all these things on their own. Whether that's going to their own gym, exercising outside, using their home gym, whatever it is, we're really trying to give them programs that they can execute and build into their lives, right? We want something sustainable. This isn't about, you lose 20 pounds and then go on with your life and go back to the old equilibrium.
And are you finding in your first 6 months, there's a specific type of person that says, oh yeah, this is what I've been looking for, right? Like, are you finding that yet so far? Or?
Yeah, I think, as you know, anytime you start a business, you have like a client in mind, but that evolves with time. And that certainly happened for us. I think there's certainly we're serving multiple decades of life, right? All the way from 20s up until the 8th decade of life so far. But most of the patients that we find that fit and are most excited about the program are those that their kids are coming into college age. They're thinking long term. They want to make changes because they want to have an active, healthy, and long life.
Yeah. And so longevity is coming up a lot these days, right? In the news and podcasts and social media. How does Mission Metabolic Health, like, how does that fit in that longevity conversation?
Yeah, I think, again, when it comes to longevity, it's been a term that has really come into focus in the last few years, and we see ourselves in that space. Absolutely. We have advantages over typical primary care in that we can spend more time with the patients. We have advantages in that we can affect those basic foundational things that are so critical to longevity. But I think in the way most people think about it, it's with doing a deep dive on all the metrics, right? Looking closer at the labs, following the labs, seeing empirically, how do people respond to the interventions? Instead of just saying, take this pill, see you in a year,
right?
We'll recheck at that point. We really want to know, okay, if we get your sleep to this point, if we get your exercise here, if we add in this particular medicine, how is it changing things? And is it for the better or worse? And how potent is it? As far as change, because anytime you're making a decision about a medicine you're taking for the rest of your life, that's a big deal. We don't take that lightly. So we want to be sure we're doing the right thing.
So speaking of longevity and speaking of social media, right? I mean, health and wellness is a huge sector of the world, right? Like podcasters are talking about it. You're seeing it on Instagram and TikTok. It's, I can't open one of those without seeing something about it pop up in my feed. But there's people who are genuinely working in that space. And then I think there's a lot of fish oil, right? There's people that are selling stuff, whether it's supplements or what have you, or it might be misinformation or disinformation. What do people need to be on the lookout for? What are red flags out there that you see that people should be aware of?
I think there's a couple challenges here. One is sorting out kind of what's effective and what's sort of like, we don't really know, how effective it is. There's really not much data out there. And that can be really tricky because we don't have large controlled studies on every single agent and every single intervention. So it's easy to get mixed up on it. Keeping a broad global view on what your goals are and how these tools can get you there and what the risks are, help frame it in a way that makes it easier to decide on whether you want to use any particular supplement or medicine or lifestyle intervention. So you really have to take that global view. It can't be so narrow as to say, I just want to change this one lab. We want to think about how does that fit into your long-term plan? So that's the first thing. The second thing is, getting help, right? Having someone give you some guidance on this and someone that has your best intentions in mind, right? And I see this play out a lot. I do a lot of hormone therapy, whether it's menopausal hormone therapy or testosterone therapy. It's something that plays out commonly in testosterone clinics, right? Which are serving a need. Like there's plenty of brands around that will see the patients. They're seeking out a way to feel more energy. Maybe their libido's low. So they go to one of these places and they're given a supplement. And that's fine and good. Again, they're serving a need. But are we taking a global view here? Like, what are the long-term implications of that? Are we doing it the right way? What other numbers should we be keeping track of, right? And so this separation between primary care and some of these like niche clinics makes me a little bit nervous. Someone needs to be watching over sort of from a global perspective.
one of those, if they're not always saying when they're putting out their reel on Instagram, consult your physician before, you do any of this. They're just saying buy our deal because we get paid per click or.
Yeah, it's a little bit of a problem I see developing. The other thing is like when stuff goes wrong, they are saying consult your physician, right? But that's problematic. We shouldn't be waiting until something goes wrong. We should be tracking those things, making sure that there aren't problems. So, and that's really the role and the foundation of primary care is like that relationship, that understanding that you gain by following someone longitudinally, right?
So you talked a lot about following different labs, different metrics. What do you think about wearable devices? So, I mean, I've been debating between getting a Whoop or an Oura Ring. There's a lot of people that are like pro or cons of one of those, but
yeah.
I like data, right? I mean, we're an Apple Watch. We use the MyZone with the Edge of the DAC, right?
Yeah, I have plenty of patients that use them, and we find them to be really helpful when we're setting goals around them. So whether it's something as simple as a step counter, or if we're pursuing particular sleep goals, they can be obviously a wealth of knowledge. Now, the caveat to that is like, I've certainly seen the patient that gets kind of caught up in it a little too much and they're stressing out about it. And in that way, it can be counterproductive.
Right.
We're
trying to avoid stress.
If you're like up all night thinking about your Oura Ring and how you're screwing it up, like that's not exactly constructive. So, we got to approach it with some caution, but I think overall it can be, a wonderful tool, especially if you have particular goals in mind.
Nice. So as we're approaching the end of our time, one thing I always like to ask folks, because, there's sometimes I think too much negativity in the world these days. And I'm always curious, what is bringing you joy these days?
Okay. We were talking before and it's tough to narrow it down to one thing.
Okay, it doesn't
I can
have
sort
to
of
be
see
one thing.
myself as a joyful person. So, I think, I gotta say my 5-year-old daughter is bringing me a ton of joy.
Yeah. How so?
Well, just the little things, right? The trips to the pool and the level of excitement that something simple like a walk with the wagon can deliver. We see a bug along the way or something. She's so pumped about it.
Yeah.
Like it's just, you don't get exposure to that a ton in your adult life. And so anytime you can get it from your own 5-year-old, you're like, this is awesome.
Yeah.
Secondarily, around work, I think the success, even in the short time we've been open, the success I've seen in the enthusiasm from patients has been like, it's so uplifting when someone meets a goal or we move a metric in the right direction and they're thrilled about it. And then the third one's kind of more trivial, and that's, do you know what wing foiling is?
Oh, tell me more.
Okay, so it's like windsurfing,
Yeah.
but you sort of have this independent wing, and you're on a foil. So the board will, if you get some speed going, the board will come out of the water. So I've been doing that for the last couple of years.
Now, is this like, it looks like a parachute that you fly? Like, is that?
So that's kiteboarding.
Okay.
This is like a little closer to you. You're just kind of holding it out, and it's an inflatable strut with a kind of a sail on it, basically.
Okay.
But it's, I'm not good at it, but it's really fun.
It sounds like it.
Yeah, you get out there. It's like I'm bad enough that it's a really good workout. I'm sure like the really good guys are like, no sweat, but and just being out in the water and, seeing the waves roll by, it's really magical.
So what does that feel like when you catch the wind and you get up on that foil and you're really humming on that?
So you don't go that fast, but yeah, you're up high. So it's exhilarating for sure. Every once in a while I'll have like a moment where I feel like I'm under control. And that feels like incredible. And then something will come along and I'll sort of stumble. And the good news is you land in the water. So like it's easy to laugh off your failures and get back on and go for it again.
That is really cool.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing that. I'd never heard of that before.
Yeah. Maybe I'll show you sometime.
I'd love that. Yeah, I'd love to try that. So before we go, so where can we find more information about Mission Metabolic Health?
So you can go to our website, www.missionmetabolichealth.com. You can certainly give us a call if you want to find out more, but we'd love to have you look. I'll, again, probably be doing more events around town, so catch one of my talks, and we'd love to have you reach out.
And can we follow you on Instagram, Facebook?
Instagram and Facebook. Yep.
Okay.
Mission Metabolic Health.
Awesome. Well, Dr. Sean Cassleman, appreciate you being here today.
Thank you so much for having me. This is a blast.
Awesome. Thanks. Thank you so much to Sean Cassleman for joining us here on the Enthusiastic Life podcast. Wing surfing, I think you call it, a wing foiling, whatever. So cool. I totally want to do that. When we finished talking, I just hit him up and said, listen, whenever you want to take me to do that, I want to give it a shot. I might hurt myself. I might hurt myself badly, but I want to do it. Hope you enjoyed that conversation with Dr. Cassleman. Check out Mission Metabolic Health on their website, missionmetabolichealth.com. Follow them on Instagram, Facebook. Check them out. I think they're doing really important work, and I hope you enjoyed that conversation as much as I did. So thank you to all of you for joining us, whether you're watching on YouTube, listening on Spotify or Apple Podcasts. If you like this, please consider giving this a share to someone who likes talking about cool things. When I started this podcast, the idea was to talk to cool and interesting people doing cool and interesting things and find out how they got to where they are. And would love for more people to enjoy it if you think they will. So give us a like, give us a share, give us a rating, or not. All good. So thank you so much for joining us. Look forward to talking to you next time, and have a great day.